us were at ECA training when we went over the READ Act, so I only am going to show just a few of the slides from that presentation, just to give you an overview, and I promised some people that I would go through this part really quickly. So we used to operate under the Colorado Basic Literacy Act, CBLA. It is repealed, and now we have the READ Act, which stands for Reading to Ensure Academic Development. So these are some components that were not in CBLA, and I'll give you a moment to take a look at them, but I have a couple of slides that explain each of them as we go. Possibly not the funding slide or the bottom slide bullet, so I'm going to go ahead and let you know that there were no federal funds associated with the Colorado Basic Literacy Act, but now there are state funds associated with the READ Act that helps our districts to provide the correct interventions for students. Does it come directly to a building? No. Does it come directly to a classroom? I'm sorry, no. Also, this is the first time that schools are required to have a literacy component and a READ Act goal in their UIP or Unified Improvement Plan. These are some more of the major differences. Is in the Colorado Basic Literacy Act, we used to focus on kids who are at the strategic level and the watch level, whereas the law now covers kids who are at that intensive level. They call it SRD, Significant Reading Deficiency. Formerly, we would create a plan. We normally communicated with parents at conference about the plan, and then they would sign it and we'd put a copy in the CUNY folder. But one of the main premises of the READ Act is that the state really recognizes that parent involvement and parent support is one of the factors that helps with achievement for students. So now the idea is to bring them in while we're developing the plan and get their input. I'm not saying that our parents who are not in the field of education are going to be able to help us write the plan, but they're definitely there while it's being created. And in addition to that, we try to have a support component of how can they support reading for that child at home. So under CBLA, interim assessments were from an approved list. Now our district has also purchased a diagnostic assessment. So if a student is intensive level on an interim or benchmark assessment, you follow up and give them another assessment within 30 days, and you give them a diagnostic component that helps to drill down to determine which of the 5 components of literacy is the root cause of this student's need. So you're going to have more data, more information about phonics, whether it's phonics, phonemic awareness, vocabulary development, comprehension, and of course fluency. So we've always provided interventions to try to help our students. Another component that's in READ Act that was not in Colorado Basic Literacy Act is that we must consider, for those students who have an SRD, we must consider retention. They call it advancement. I love that they stated it in a positive way. We have to consider retention as a possible intervention if we believe it will help that student. School-based decision about intervention. Now the state has an approved list of interventions. I will get a copy to our whole staff as soon as possible. It's also available by going to the CBE website. You can click on Early Literacy Grant, you can click on READ Act. Almost everywhere you go, you're going to see the approved state list. Foundations is on the list, Wilson is on the list, Read Naturally is on the list. We'd have to, stop and look for other interventions besides that. And you can also see from that fifth box down that there is a move toward having the assessments and the interventions and the progress monitoring delivered by a highly certified teacher. So we used to have lit plans and IEPs, and now the idea is that the components of a reading plan a READ plan can be incorporated into an IEP or a 504 or any other kind of plan. Kindergarten might have readiness plans for their students with the new TS Gold assessments. And so any kind of plan, we're going to try to meld them together and just carry one. There's a little tiny glitch with that in that IEPs are on Encore, and Encore and SOARS, which is where the rest of the data is stored, are not, they don't talk to each other. And so it might be a little glitchy this year as we transition into full compliance with READ Act, just to make sure that students who are on an IEP that have a reading component are incorporating those elements of their READ plan as well. Again, this is only for students who've been identified with an SRD, significant reading deficiency.
And Encore is going away after this year.
That was my understanding, that the district will be adopting a new program that is more easily adapted to SOARS and to be announced. Retention and promotion, we've always considered it in our building, but now it is required as a possible intervention strategy to be considered. And the parent communication piece is part of that. We do not make the decision. Ultimately, the principal does get to make the decision, but we would never retain a student without parent buy-in. Normally, if that were to happen, first of all, it's just not good practice, and also they would probably just leave and go to a different school. So it's not going to be life-changing because we do so many of the things that are currently part of the READ plan. We have our RTI processes, we have our monthly meetings where we collaborate with teammates to try to figure out the best interventions for students. We set goals in RTI and we tend to them. We can duplicate that work as part of a READ plan. We already have a formal method, of following kids' reading goals. Those are the LIT plans. It will change a little bit, and I think I have a slide on that coming up. Assessment, intervention, and progress monitoring are no strangers to our classrooms. We've formally used parent communication a lot. I don't think there's a teacher in this building that doesn't communicate on at least a weekly or bi-weekly basis with parents of students who are below grade level in any discipline. So parent communication will be just continuing, but remember that it is a required component that they take part in building the READ plan. And because we have our beautiful SOARS system and our RTI notes, we can share goals, information, LIT plan status, and all that type of data across the district and even across the state, although the other districts may not have SOARS. I made this slide for my benefit because this is how I process, but you're going to hear some vocabulary changes as we move into the READ Act. And so we used to say a student was red or a student was intensive, and then on the University of Oregon DIBELS website it would say well below benchmark. That was our red category. Now you're going to hear it called the legal term determined by the state, significant reading deficiency. I've already adopted SRD because it's way too many syllables to be saying on a continual basis. And then for our yellow kids, we used to say they had strategic needs. Now they're identified through the READ Act as having a reading concern. We used to call the benchmark window September, January, April, and the first time I started seeing papers that said BOY on them, of course I thought it said boy, but obviously it stands for beginning of year, middle of year, end of year, and you're just going to hear things referred to that way. So just like a student, if you adopt the common vocabulary, it will help you. And instead of calling them benchmark assessments, they're frequently referred to as interim, in other words, given at periods throughout the year. What else? The literacy plan. Okay, we used to have a LIT plan status in SOARS for students who were intensive. Often our strategic kids would also be on a LIT plan. Occasionally our strategic kids would be on a LIT watch. Now we're required, if they have the SRD designation, we're required to develop a READ plan for those students. And our LIT plan will be our yellow students or our students who have a reading concern, to use the new terminology. Throughout this year, you're going to help us transition into compliance with the READ Act. We don't expect you to come in on day one and have students on READ plans and students on LIT plans if they are having a reading concern. Instead, we're going to transition throughout the year, and students who are on a LIT watch, we're going to phase those LIT watches out altogether and make decisions about should they be on a plan, which would be reading concern, that's meant to say LIT plan, or should they be on a READ plan, and that's significant reading deficiency. DIBELS and DIBELS Next, which is the version of DIBELS that we're using in our district, did not change, and that is so nice to know. The cutoffs are the same, the way you administer the test is basically the same. The only thing that changed is our district employed a vendor called Amplify. They used to be called Wireless Generation, and that vendor is bringing us a software program called M-Class, which stands for Mobile Classroom. And so now we used to call it Dibbles, and you're going to hear it called M-Class Dibbles next. M-Class is the software, Amplify is the vendor, Dibbles next is the same. We used to go to the University of Oregon and enter our data. We used to go to the University of Oregon and download paper when we needed extra student booklets. We can still go to the University of Oregon and download things that we need free of charge. But the only thing that I think we're going to need are student copies of days, and I've already done that for 3rd grade. And now instead, everything's going to be stored in the cloud. You don't have to go into a website. Well, I'm going to take it back a little bit, because days is still class administered and days is still entered in separately in a reports section of M-Class. However, all the rest of the data, as you assess, it's going to be stored on your hard drive of your device that you're using, and then when you press a sync button, then it's going to be stored in the cloud and you can access it from anywhere. I think we've kind of covered this. We already do those things. As a matter of fact, I think I'm sharing slides again. Okay. If you give an assessment during the window, a benchmark or interim assessment, and the student comes in on their composite score, they're in the cutoff range or well below, then that means you're going to retest them again within 30 days. So we're talking September 3rd through 27th. Logically, you're going to retest between October 3rd and 27th. If they continue to be in that cutoff range, they're identified as having an SRD, and that's when you give the diagnostic assessment. The diagnostic assessment is also brought to us by M-Class. It is called BURST. Our district has not given the coaches training on how to deliver BURST yet, so we're going to have just-in-time learning about that assessment, hopefully this coming month. This says cutoff scores are different for each grade level and benchmark. However, they are not different from what you used previously. And a lot of you have a green sheet that not only tells you what the cutoffs are, tells what the benchmarks are. And in addition to that, you can look at it and see which assessments you're going to be giving in any interim period of the year. So if you don't have one already, take one now. And it's just kind of a little cheat sheet for you. What is benchmark for 2nd grade Dorf in January? And the bottom number is the state cutoff or the SRD level.
Are we able to get a copy of this presentation?
Sure. For the people that were at ECOT training, I did copy those slides, but if you want to just drop me a note, I can email to you the whole presentation.
Okay.
How about if we put it
If you
in the
want.
R
But the
drive?
most pertinent slides are right here for anybody that wants them. And thanks for reminding me to hand those out. But I didn't make a whole bunch of copies because a lot of people have been in this before.
Oh, okay.
So if you would like one, take one. If not, leave it on the table when you.
Thank you.
Sure. There is a slide coming up that's fairly pertinent because it's your pathway to identification of a significant reading deficiency. So I'm just going to keep on going. Okay, so again, teachers and parents work together to create the READ plan. And the timing is fortunate that our fall conferences are probably going to be a reasonable time to be meeting with parents. If I had a student that had been identified as having an SRD, I would probably just schedule a double conference slot for that parent and use that time to go over all the disciplines as well as starting to establish the READ plan. And I think that might be all of the slides that we need to look at here. Oh, this is the one that's in your packet. K through 3 is the top row, and it tells you what is the path for a student that you have a reading concern about and or you think they are going to be identified as having a significant reading deficiency. So following along, basically you give them the benchmark assessment between September 3rd and 27th. If their composite score is below that cutoff mark, that the state has set that matches the DIBELS Next significant cutoffs. Then within 30 days you retest. If I haven't said that you use progress monitoring material for the retest, I'm saying so now. And then after you have those two pieces of data, you will give the burst assessment using the same methods that you're using to give the DIBELS assessment, and then you worked with the parents to create the read plan. So that's really all I have on that. I wanted most of this to be time for you to have some hands-on practice with DIBELS. So I have to go to the slide with the logins, and I have some wonderful materials for you. No break, sorry. Okay, so some coaches in our articulation area created a cheat sheet, and this is all of the scoring rules, and it tells you exactly what to tap, what to drag, what to click. It is a marvelous tool. The left side and the right side are exactly the same. There is a page for each of the subtests that are administered, so find the ones that pertain to your grade level. FSF is kindergarten only, for example. And the reason that the left side and the right side are the same was because I thought that you might appreciate having a full-size sheet of paper that you could put into one of your own binders. But if you want to cut it in half and share with a teammate, that's fine. I also will be providing that to people who are not here today, teachers of K-3. So I thought that was a pretty cool document. And the last page of it tells you some general information about using M-Class DIBELS, and that's really where we're going next. If you're using a PC laptop, you want to go through Google Chrome. For people who are using the PC laptop, it's recommended that you use a remote mouse, and that's if you're giving the Nonsense Word Fluency test. So not every grade level needed that, but I've already sent an email asking who might want that remote mouse, and if you find you need one, please let me know. So those people are going to go into the internet through Google Chrome, and then the rest of us, if we're using an iPad, and look, you can do it with almost any mobile device. They say it even works with a Droid, but I have a Droid phone and I did not try it. I just went to my trusty laptop, and that's your browser, Safari browser for our Apple users. This is the website for a practice. Sometime this week, I should be distributing to you your actual teacher login information to go to the assessment site because the DIBELS window opens next week. But today we're going to do some practice, and I was kind of thinking that we should differentiate. There are a bunch of us that need to have a DORF practice because that does fall in our grade level. If not at the beginning of year interim assessment, at least later on. But Lori needs to do a days today, and I can stay and talk with her about that. And then there are a couple of us that need to do Nonsense Word Fluency. And I want kindergarten to have a chance to go off and practice maybe in a partnership or a triad. So I have materials that you can do to practice your first sound fluency, which is the first test you give, and then I think you guys in kindergarten give letter naming fluency as well. Okay, so kindergarten teachers, do you want to just get the material from me and go practice an LNF and an FSF and not try a DORF since you'll never be giving a DORF? Okay, so what I have for those three teachers that are going to go off and work in a triad is a training script. So you can take one of these, and one of you can play the student, find the right test, and you can play the student and say the words that the student would say, or name the letters that the student would name. It gives you a script, and then that way, if you use the script while you're playing around with FSF, you can have inter-rater reliability. One of you will say, I need, you know, my student named 11 letters, and the other one's going to say 12, so you can figure out where you are with that. The other resource I wanted to mention is the cheat sheet's really handy, but if you do have a question about you know, how do I score a mispronunciation of a proper noun, or the student self-corrected, but they still mispronounced due to a dialect. The rules have not changed. If you were familiar with how to administer DIBELS in the past, you still will be, but there are very detailed examples in your assessment guide, assessment manual, that will help you answer those kinds of questions too. Because I have not literally memorized every test, but I do have a general idea of what to score in each one. So those of you who are not going to try it, before Kindy leaves, can you tell me that you were able to get on?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question. That email that we got though, that says to like verify our email address. So does that mean they're going to send us our own login soon?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. If you get an
We don't have
email
it yet.
from a company called Amplify that says verify,
Yeah, it said
just click
Amplify.
on the link in the email, and then that should be an automatic way of getting your password for actual DIBELS. Again, this is practice assessment.
So, so we should have gotten it when we clicked on that?
Today you're practicing. I'm not sure I am understanding. You
Okay.
did not get
No, I
your,
know for
No, all we had to do was
verify.
all you have to do is
And they're gonna send
verify.
another email
Yeah.
with our
Right,
password.
and then the district will issue the passwords
Perfect.
as soon as possible.
Okay.
I'm hoping for this week.
So on the username, do we type in D next?
You type in DNext 112,
Okay.
I couldn't
And
tell
then-
there was a space.
but be careful because my screen already took me to password. So if it asks for a username, it's DNext 112. If it's only asking for password, it's 1234. And if you're at this screen right here, raise your hand. I know we can help everybody get logged in. Okay, so Ashley and Karen and Stacy, you are in practice, you can't mess it up, but learn how to clear out, you know, any
Says I have
things
to
that you guys are clicking on.
Yeah.
You know how to invalidate the probe, and then you can go back and practice some more.
Yeah.
So hopefully you have everything you need for some partner practice, but would one of the three of you make a list of questions that you have as you're practicing, and then I can address those tomorrow?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then the rest of us that are here, is there anybody having difficulty logging in? Okay, so
Mine saying
we're
something
gonna
about adding the app,
take
so.
care of that, and we'll do some practice.
It came up